He was raised by the Mafia Don. When they shot his dog, he declared war on the entire family. The rain fell like a dirge, soaking the cracked streets of present-day Philadelphia, where neon signs bled red into puddles, and the old mob still ruled the shadows of cigar lounges. Luca Moretti knelt in a muddy lot, burying his dog under a street lamp's pale glow, his hands caked with earth, his face carved from stone. The city slept, oblivious, but a war had been born in the dark. 20 years ago, Luca was a rail-thin orphan, 10 years old, shivering in a South Philly alley, his breath clouding in the February chill. Don Salvatore Greco, the unchallenged king of the city's underworld, found him behind a dumpster, scrounging for half-eaten hoagies. Salvatore, in a tailored gray suit, fedora tilted low, lit a cigar, the flame catching the boy's defiant eyes. "You got no one," he said, his voice gravelly, certain. Luca nodded, lips tight, his fists balled against the cold. That night, Salvatore brought him to the Greco Social Club, a dimly lit fortress of mahogany and cigar smoke, and gave him a cot, a name, and a future. 5 years later, on Luca's 15th birthday, Salvatore handed him a leash, attached to a scrappy gray mutt with loyal eyes and a limp from a street fight. "This dog," Salvatore said, his ringed hand heavy on Luca's shoulder, "will teach you how to protect something innocent." Luca named him Nero, after the shadows they'd both crawled from. Now, at 29, Luca was a phantom in the Greco family's machine. Lean, quiet, with dark hair falling into darker eyes, he moved through Philly's underworld like a blade, sharp, unseen. He was an enforcer, not for power, but for duty, his loyalty to Salvatore absolute. He wanted no throne, no glory, just the rhythm of his days. Mornings sweeping the club's floors, evenings walking Nero through alleys where the city's pulse thrummed low. His apartment was sparse, a mattress, a chair, a chipped bowl for Nero's food. The dog slept at his feet, a constant, the only thing Luca loved without fear. The Greco crew called him Whispers for his silence, respecting his fists but underestimating his heart. They didn't see the fire beneath, banked but never extinguished. The Social Club, a relic of old Philly with its wood-paneled walls and haze of Cuban cigars, was Luca's second home. He polished glasses behind the bar, listening as capos bragged over whiskey, their gold pinky rings glinting. Frankie Knives Russo, Salvatore's right hand, would clap Luca's shoulder, saying, "Good kid, stays quiet." But their eyes slid past him, seeing a loyal dog, not a threat. Outside, the city churned. Rainy nights, neon flickering over pawn shops, the Delaware River's stink mingling with diesel. Luca and Nero walked those streets, the dog's tags jingling softly, a sound that grounded Luca's world. The night was raw, the air thick with salt and exhaust, rain slicking the pavement until it shone like glass. Luca walked Nero down a narrow street off Passyunk Avenue, neon from a dive bar casting blue shadows across their path. 3 goons from the rival Caruso family spilled out of a black Cadillac, their gold chains catching the light, their voices loud with vodka and ego. They were young, reckless, foot soldiers for Capo Marco Bellini, who'd been carving into Greco turf with smuggled coke and backroom deals. The leader, Vinny Teeth Caruso, with a gold-capped grin and a scar across his cheek, spotted Luca and sneered, swaying. "Yo, dog walker, pay a toll." His crew, Joey, wiry, with a twitchy laugh and a switchblade, and Big Sal, a wall of muscle with bad tattoos, closed in, blocking the alley like a trap. Luca kept walking, Nero's leash loose, the dog's ears pricked. Vinny stepped closer, pulling a .45, his breath sour with liquor. "You deaf, Greco boy?" Joey kicked a bottle, shattering it near Nero, who growled, low and guttural. Luca's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Vinny, his voice flat, barely audible over the rain. "Move on." Vinny's laugh was sharp, cruel. He aimed the .45 at Nero's head, the barrel steadied despite his sway. "Just a mutt, right?" The shot cracked, splitting the night. Nero yelped, a sound that clawed at Luca's chest and collapsed, blood pooling under his gray fur, rain diluting it to pink. Luca froze, his breath catching, his hand tight on the leash. Joey cackled, slapping Vinny's shoulder. "It's just a dog, man," Big Sal spat into the puddle, grinning. "Run back to your Don," Whispers. They piled into the Cadillac, tires screeching, leaving Luca kneeling beside Nero, the rain soaking his jeans, his hands trembling as they touched the dog's still warm fur. Luca didn't cry. He didn't speak. He carried Nero's body to an empty lot 2 blocks away, the rain relentless, washing blood into the cracks of the street. Under a street lamp's flickering glow, he dug a grave with his hands, the mud cold, unyielding, clinging to his knuckles like guilt. Nero's collar, leather worn soft, its metal tag etched with his name, lay heavy in Luca's pocket. He buried the dog, the lamp's light cutting through the dark like a judgment. Back in his apartment, Luca sat on the floor, the collar in his hands, his fingers tracing the tag's letters. The city's hum was distant, drowned by the rain's drone. He pulled a switchblade from his boot, its blade catching the dim light, and cut the collar into 3 pieces, each a shard of his vow. He slipped them into his pocket, his face blank, but his eyes burning. The war had begun. The first kill was silent, precise. Vinny Teeth was found at dawn in a dumpster behind a Caruso-owned diner, his throat slit, his gold-capped grin frozen. A piece of Nero's collar, its leather stained with blood, was tucked into his chain, a message no one yet understood. Luca had moved like a shadow, his switchblade an extension of his hand, his steps silent on the wet pavement. He'd watched Vinny stumble out of the diner, drunk, alone, bragging into a phone about teaching Greco's boy a lesson. Luca didn't hesitate. The blade was quick, the collar piece deliberate, left like a signature. Joey was next, 2 nights later, ambushed in a parking garage near the waterfront. Luca waited in the shadows, his breath steady, his shoulder still aching from carrying Nero's weight. Joey, twitchy as ever, fumbled with his keys, laughing about the dog walker to a buddy on the phone. Luca stepped forward, his boots soft on the concrete, and snapped Joey's fingers one by one, the cracks echoing like gunshots. Joey screamed, dropping to his knees, but Luca's voice was low, deadly. "You laughed." A bullet through Joey's eye ended it. The second piece of collar slipped into his jacket pocket, the leather dark against the blood. Big Sal lasted a week, holed up in a Caruso safe house, a squat brick building off Broad Street. Luca found him through whispers, bar talk, overheard deals. He slipped past the guards, his .45 silenced, his movements those of a man who'd learned to kill before he learned to love. Sal, sweating, his tattoos gleaming under a bare bulb, begged when Luca appeared, his tire iron raised. "It wasn't personal," Sal pleaded, his voice cracking. Luca smashed his knees, the iron heavy, deliberate. "It was to me," he said, firing once, clean through the chest. The third piece of collar lay on Sal's body, blood-soaked, a marker of justice served. The Caruso family unraveled, their empire cracking like ice. Whispers spread through Philly's underworld. A ghost was hunting, leaving collar fragments like curses. Marco Bellini, the capo, doubled his guards, his slick suits wrinkled, his eyes darting in every shadow. He sent threats to the Grecos, his voice hoarse over burner phones. "Your boy's dead." But Luca was untouchable, a specter born of loss. In the Greco Social Club, the air thick with cigar smoke and tension, the Don's inner circle grew restless. Frankie Knives cornered Luca after the third kill, his pinky ring glinting as he jabbed a finger into Luca's chest. "You're lighting a fire we can't put out, kid," he hissed, his breath sharp with whiskey. "Stop now, or the Don cuts you loose." Luca stood, rain dripping from his coat, his face unreadable. "You didn't stop them," he said, his voice a blade slicing through the smoke. Frankie stepped back, his jaw tight, the room heavy with the weight of Luca's silence. Salvatore watched from his office, his silver hair catching the lamplight, his eyes sharp but weary. He hadn't spoken of Nero, but Luca saw the Don's fingers linger on his own ring, a gold band etched with a cross, a relic of older wars. The Grecos whispered, "Was Luca rogue? Was he still theirs?" The Carusos patrolled alleys, guns drawn, but Luca was always a step ahead, his silence louder than their shouts. The city felt the shift. A storm was brewing, and Luca was its heart, cold and unstoppable. The streets grew quieter, the rain heavier, as if Philly itself sensed the reckoning. Luca moved through the nights, his shoulder wound from a stray bullet now bandaged, his .45 a constant weight. He overheard Caruso runners in a bar, their voices low, panicked. "It's him, the dog guy. He's coming for Marco next." Luca didn't smile, didn't flinch. He sipped his coffee, black and planned. The final kill came on a night when the rain turned to sleet, the streets glassy, the city holding its breath. Marco Bellini hid in a Caruso warehouse, a concrete bunker stacked with crates of smuggled liquor and coke. The air reeked of whiskey and rust, neon from a distant bar casting red shadows through broken windows. Marco paced, barking orders, his suit wrinkled, his face pale, two bodyguards flanking him with Uzis. Luca slipped past the outer guards, his boots silent, his .45 tucked tight. He'd learned these moves from Salvatore, honed them in alleys where mercy was a myth. He stepped into the light, his jacket soaked, his eyes dead. Marco froze, his voice shrill. "You Greco's dog? Tell Salvatore he's finished." Luca pulled the last piece of Nero's collar from his pocket, its metal tag glinting. "This ain't for Salvatore," he said, his voice low, cutting through the sleet's hiss. "You killed something innocent. Now you pay." A bodyguard lunged, Uzi raised, but Luca was faster, his switchblade flashing, slicing the man's wrist, the gun clattering. The second fired, the bullet grazing Luca's shoulder, blood soaking his shirt. Luca didn't blink. He shot twice. Clean, both guards down, their blood pooling with the rain. Marco backed against a crate, hands raised, his bravado shattered. "It was just a dog," he stammered, his voice breaking. Luca stepped closer, the .45 steady, his face a mask of controlled rage. "Nero was mine," he said, "and you laughed." He fired once, through Marco's heart, the capo slumping, eyes wide, the collar piece falling onto his chest like a gravestone. Luca stood over him, the sleet washing blood from his hands, his shoulder throbbing but ignored. The warehouse was silent, save for the rain's relentless beat. The Greco Social Club was a crypt, the cigar smoke thick, the rain a faint drum outside. Luca walked in, his shoulder bandaged, his coat dripping, the air parting as the crew stepped back, their eyes averted, fear and awe mingling. Salvatore sat at his desk, his hands folded, his cross-etched ring glinting under the lamplight. Luca said nothing. He pulled the final piece of Nero's collar from his pocket, its tag scratched but whole, and placed it on the desk. The metal clinked, a sound that echoed like a gavel. Salvatore's eyes met Luca's, not angry, not proud, but heavy, like a father who'd seen too much loss. Luca turned, walking out, the door's bell jangling, the rain swallowing his steps. The city would whisper his name now, not as whispers, but as a shadow forged in loyalty, broken by loss. In the silence of the Greco Club, where blood and honor reigned, a truth settled like ash. Some debts are paid not in gold, but in silence.